Hello and welcome to the Comeback Champion Summit. My name is Coach Micheal Taylor and I am the author of Adversity is Your Greatest Ally: How to Use Life Challenges as Stepping Stones to Live the Life of Your Dreams. Well, currently we are living in some very uncertain times, and now is the perfect time to participate in this summit, because through this summit we're going to provide some tools and strategies to support you in dealing with all the challenges that are currently going on. We've got COVID-19 pandemics, we've got racial unrest, we've got global warming, and the list goes on and on. So it appears that the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Well, I have a completely different perspective. It is my belief that there has never been a better time to be alive on the planet than right now. And for those of us who are willing to put forth the effort, we can create extraordinary lives. And so I want to share some tips and strategies that has allowed me to overcome some adversities in my life to now living my version of an extraordinary one. And so I want to begin with a question. And I want you to take a moment and really think about the question before you answer it for yourself. And so here's the question. Are you genuinely happy with your life? Think about that for a moment. Are you genuinely happy with your life? Now, as I just mentioned, there are lots of challenges out there, so there's plenty of reasons to not be happy. People are losing their jobs, people are actually dying, there's so much chaos in the world, so I know that a lot of people don't feel happy right now. But I am absolutely certain it is possible for any human being to be genuinely happy with their lives. And every human being has the capacity to create extraordinary ones. Now, extraordinary will mean different things to different people. So for me, I believe there are 4 pillars to an extraordinary life. There's inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance, which simply means that you have enough money that you're not stressing out over it. So those are the 4 pillars of building of an extraordinary life. And so when you balance those 4 things, I believe you'll be genuinely happy with your life. If either one of those things is missing, then there's a good chance that you won't be happy with your life. So once again, I'll say this. I honestly believe that there's never been a better time to be alive on the planet than right now. Yes, there are challenges. Yes, there are tons and tons of adversities out there. But if you're watching this video, rest assured you have everything you need to overcome any adversity in your life. I'm absolutely certain about it. So what would it take for you to be authentically happy? Well, again, I think if you think about those 4 pillars, it takes those 4 pillars for you to be happy. So if you're currently unhappy right now, I can say with confidence that you're probably missing one of those pillars. Something's missing in your life. And one of the things that'll really keep you from being happy is adversity. And adversity can be defined as a feeling of something's missing. Or adversity can be defined as an experience of discomfort and displeasure in your life. That's just a simple explanation of adversity. So what I want to do is I want to share some tips on overcoming adversity. Because again, I believe everyone can overcome any adversity. And when you learn to deal with adversity, then your life will become extraordinary and you can be genuinely happy. So I want you to think about some of the adversities that we as human beings have to deal with. Things like divorce, breakups, health issues, death of a loved one, betrayal, losing a job, depression, and a list goes on and on. And so as you think about those adversities, I want you to ask yourself this question. Are those things that I just mentioned, those adversities, are they good or are they bad? That's something to ponder. Are adversities good or are they bad? Now, before I answer the question, I want to share something that Shakespeare said. Shakespeare once said, "Nothing is either good or bad until you think it's so." So I want to take a moment to share some people who've overcome adversity before I answer that question. So take a moment and think about these people that I'm sure you'll recognize. So let's start with Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg is a world famous director of movies, right? But did you know that Steven Spielberg was actually kicked out of USC Film School because they said he wasn't a good director? And yet he's one of the most recognized and best directors ever. And yet he had to overcome the adversity of being kicked out of film school because the professors didn't think he had what it took to be a great director. And what about Albert Einstein, my favorite scientist? Obviously, he changed the world with his theoretical mind and his E=mc² theory. But did you know that Albert Einstein didn't speak until he was about 4 years old? And as a matter of fact, his parents thought that he was intellectually challenged. And yet look at how he changed the world with his brilliance. And then there's Oprah Winfrey. We all know Oprah Winfrey, multi-billion-dollar media mogul Oprah Winfrey. And yet, did you know that Oprah Winfrey actually was raped and had a child at 13, and the child actually died? And yet, look at how her life turned out. Obviously, she went through a lot of adversity. And then there's Nelson Mandela. So here's a guy, spends 27 years in prison. 27 years in prison. And yet he held on to a dream of one day freeing South Africa from apartheid. And after 27 years, he gets out of prison and he fulfills that dream and becomes president of South Africa and ends apartheid. That's a powerful story. And then there's the master teacher, Jesus the Christ, who possibly overcame life's greatest adversity, which is death. And yet Jesus said, "These things and even greater things you shall do also." So I believe what he was pointing to is that we as human beings have access to the same Father that he always talked about in his sermons. So we have to be willing to embrace the idea that there is a part of us that is divine. And this has absolutely nothing to do with organized religion. It has everything to do with science and spirituality. As a human being, you have direct access to divinity. There's a part of you that is divine. And as soon as you will accept this idea, then you will have the foundation for overcoming any adversity in your life. Because that spark of divinity is in you. It's up to you to tap into it. So I want to share my own story of overcoming adversity. You see, I was born in the inner city projects of Corpus Christi, Texas, to a single mom with 6 kids, and we were basically the poster children for poverty back in the 60s. When I was 6 years old, I was separated from my mom, and I had to go spend 7 years with my grandmother, who was literally the grandmother from hell. And I experienced every imaginable type of abuse a child could experience for 7 years. After 7 years, I was reunited with my mom. And so I get to junior high school, I get to high school, and I decide that I'm going to drop out of high school because I convinced myself that I could get rich selling vacuum cleaners. Unfortunately, I never sold a single vacuum cleaner, and that was obviously a poor choice. But fortunately for me, I secured a job with a building supply center, and I worked extremely hard, and I climbed the corporate ladder, and I became the youngest manager in the history of that particular company. And I was only the second black manager out of its 70-year history. And so at the age of 23, I was living the American dream. I had the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids and all of that, and by society standards, I was successful. And within approximately a 6.5-year time frame, my American dream turned into the American nightmare as I went through a divorce, a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, a deep, deep state of depression. I was even homeless for 2 years, living out of my car. So I know a thing or two about overcoming adversity. And what I have come to believe is that every adversity actually brings us a gift and a lesson if we're willing to look deeply enough. Now, without question, it's difficult to see the gift and the lesson when we're right smack dab in the middle of adversity. But I am absolutely certain that no matter how difficult things might be, no matter how painful they may be, there is a gift and a lesson in it for you. So what I've learned from my own experience, just to kind of share why I think and believe the way that I do, is that what I now recognize in retrospect is that my divorce was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. Because for the first time in my life, I was forced to stop looking outside of myself and to start looking within to figure out what it was about Micheal Taylor that was keeping me from being happy and was keeping me from living an extraordinary life. And so I had to begin what I'll call my journey of transformation. And that journey began actually with a miracle. I was sitting up late one night because I was too depressed to sleep. And I was sitting at the edge of my bed looking across the room at my bookshelf when I happened to notice that every book on my bookshelf had something to do with getting rich or making money. And as I looked at those books, this question just popped in my head. And the question was this: Micheal, what if you took all the energy and effort you've used in trying to get rich and simply figure out how to be happy? And it was that one simple question that literally changed and saved my life in an instant. I could never explain it in words, but something in me shifted. And all of a sudden I had this amazing clarity. And I could see that I was going to be able to rebuild my life. And it was going to become extraordinary. And so as a result of asking that simple question, I stopped reading books on getting rich and making money. And I started reading books on psychology and philosophy and spirituality and metaphysics and personal development. And I began what I'll call my journey of transformation. And so that journey of transformation began with me becoming involved with the motivational speaker Anthony Robbins, who you may recognize. And at the time, Anthony Robbins was doing a thing called a fire walk, in which you walked across hot coals barefoot. And it was really just a metaphor for saying that you could overcome anything with your mind, and you could overcome any obstacles with using your mind. And I was able to do that. I walked across some hot burning coals, 2,000 degrees or so, barefooted, and didn't get burned. And so I was highly motivated, and I started to slowly put my life back together. But then I realized that, being motivated wasn't really my problem. I'd always been motivated. And so something was missing. As mentioned, I was putting my life back together. I was no longer homeless. I had an apartment. I had a job. But something was still missing. And then I read a book by a guy named John Bradshaw. And in his book, he was talking about emotional healing. And he said that the key to emotional healing was to create what he called an interpersonal bridge with another human being. And as I read that, something in me clicked, because I realized that I was motivated, but that something that was missing was I didn't know how to create that interpersonal bridge with another human being. And so in his book, he talked about one way to create that bridge was by going to therapy. And so I gained the courage to go to therapy. And it was a life-changing experience. Going to therapy taught me things about myself that motivation couldn't do. Going to therapy helped me recognize the impact of my traumatic childhood that I mentioned, the impact that it was still having on me as an adult. And so John Bradshaw offered a workshop, and the workshop was called Healing Your Inner Child. And there was a part of me that knew I really needed to do this workshop. And it was a 3-day workshop. And it was one of the most profound, powerful experiences of my life. Because what that workshop did was it allowed me to really heal the emotional, physical, and psychological trauma of an extremely abusive childhood. And I know that there are some people who believe that you shouldn't go back to the past to move forward in your future. But I completely disagree with that. Because what I have come to know is that if you have unhealed emotional trauma from childhood that you do not address, it will show up in your life in unusual ways that you may not be conscious of. And so for me, my abusive childhood was set in motion by when my mom took me to live with my grandmother at 6 years old. It created what's called abandonment issues. So as a result of my mom leaving me, I created this belief that people who love you leave you. And as a result of that belief, then I became this people-pleasing, approval-seeking guy. Because I was so afraid that people who loved me would leave me, I would do everything in my power to try to keep them from leaving. And that is a recipe for disaster in relationships, because I didn't trust people enough to love me. But through his workshop, I was able to heal that and move past that trauma and heal my heart and become genuinely happy with who I am as a human being. And it was through John Bradshaw's work that I became free. And so I know with absolute certainty that it's possible for any human being to feel free, to feel joyful, to feel happy. And it's important that we understand that the adversities that we have to deal with sometimes can actually serve as stepping stones to living the life of our dreams. So I know with absolute certainty that my life is absolutely perfect. Through the work that I've done over the past 20 years, I can tell you exactly why and how every event in my life shaped me into the man that I am today. And so if I had to do my life all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. Because I know with absolute certainty, if I moved any piece of myself, any piece of my life, I wouldn't be the man that I am today. And I wouldn't be as joyful and as happy and as passionate as I am today. So I am absolutely grateful for all of the bad time, all of the pain, all of the suffering, because they conditioned me, or they taught me to become the man that I am today. So no matter what challenge you're dealing with right now, no matter what adversity you're trying to come back from, bounce back from, rest assured that as painful as it might be, I promise you there's a gift in it. I also promise you that you're not being punished. You're being redirected to something bigger and better for your life. And my hope is by sharing some keys that I'm about to share, it can support you in building a better life. So with that being said, I now want to share what I call the 5 keys to turning your adversities into allies. And if you will really embrace these keys and apply them to your life, I'm absolutely certain you can overcome anything, any adversity, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. So, are you ready? Are you ready to hear the 5 keys to turning adversities into allies? Well, first of all, I want you to take a deep breath. Take another deep breath. And know with absolute certainty, you're not alone. Know with absolute certainty that there is a part of you that is divine. And it is that part of you that will carry you through any adversity you may be dealing with. But you must be willing to apply these 5 keys. So, if you're ready, let's jump right in. Key number 1. You must be willing to take 100% responsibility for your life turning out the way you want it to. And this can be extremely difficult because as human beings, most of us, what we'll do is we'll point fingers and place blame on others when our life isn't going the way we want it to. We may blame our parents. We may blame society. We may blame our race, our age, our education. There's a million things that we can blame, but until we take 100% responsibility for our lives turning out the way we want it to, nothing will change. Taking 100% responsibility for your life turning out the way you want it to is the way you gain your personal power. You cannot gain your personal power if you're unwilling to do this. As a matter of fact, if you aren't willing to do this, you will never, ever overcome your adversities because you'll be constantly blaming others. And when you blame others, you can't change. So the first thing you want to do is be willing to take 100% responsibility for your life turning out the way you want it to. Key number 2. You must be willing to get out of your comfort zone. As human beings, we like comfort. We don't like being uncomfortable. Most people will avoid discomfort at all cost. But if you want to turn your adversities into allies, you're going to have to stretch. You're going to have to move outside of your comfort zone and do some things that may be a little or a lot uncomfortable. You see, because if it doesn't challenge you, it can't change you. So if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you're not willing to be challenged. And if you're not willing to be challenged, you cannot and you will not grow. So you must be willing to do some things that aren't really comfortable. For example, when I went to therapy for the first time, I was absolutely terrified to go. I'll never forget that day walking into that therapist's office and I was literally sweating bullets. My shirt was wet. I was so scared. I was so nervous. But a part of me knew that I had to go. And so I was willing to be uncomfortable in order to grow. When I did John Bradshaw's workshop, I was terrified. Scared the crap out of me, but I knew I had to face my fears and move through them in order to be happy. And so by facing those fears, being willing to move through them, I grew. I transformed. And if I can do it, you can do it too. So you must be willing to get out of your comfort zone if you want to turn your adversities into allies. Number 3, you must commit to your own growth. Now, one thing I learned from Anthony Robbins, which is really impactful, has been impactful for me, is he says that as human beings, we must commit to CANI, C-A-N-I, which is an acronym for constant and never-ending improvement. And herein lies the key to your success: constant and never-ending improvement. Therefore, you must commit to constant and never-ending improvement. You must commit to constantly growing and learning new things. Don't stay stuck in old ways of thinking. The way to get into new ways of thinking is by growing and learning new things. That means being willing to read books, go to seminars, participate in things like the Comeback Champion Summit. See, all of these things are stretching your comfort zone and empowering your growth. So think of it as this: life is a process of evolution. There's really no concrete destination. There's just this amazing journey that we should all be on. And we should always be on this journey of growth and transformation and becoming the best version of ourselves. And when we do that, our lives become more rewarding, more fulfilling, and more joyful. But we have to commit to our own growth to do so. So what I've come to know, as for men especially, the three most difficult words for any man to say is, "I need help." And so if you're that type of person, male or female, don't be afraid to say, "I need help." Because when you say, "I need help," that means you're committing to your growth. So commit to your growth and your life will be transformed. Number 4, if you're going to turn your adversities into allies, you must develop a positive mental attitude. That pretty much sums it up. A positive mental attitude. So you have to understand that as a human being, the mind is your most powerful tool that you have. And having a positive mental attitude means you're willing to look at things from a positive perspective. Now, to do so, you must be willing to change paradigms. And so what is a paradigm? Well, I define paradigm as a rigid way of believing, thinking, and behaving. Let me repeat that. A paradigm is a rigid way of believing, thinking, and behaving. So if you aren't willing to shift your paradigm by believing differently, thinking differently, and behaving differently, you'll never grow. You'll never be transformed. And so a positive mental attitude allows you to shift paradigms. It allows you to stop feeling like a victim. It allows you to see that you can be 100% responsible for your life. It gives you a positive outlook. And so by having a positive mental attitude, you lay the foundation for creating positive experiences in your life. So there's a thing called the law of attraction. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but let me break it down for you. Albert Einstein once said this: everything is energy. That's just the way that it is. Match the frequency of the reality that you want to create, and there's no way you can't create that reality. It can be no other way. And then he said, this is not philosophy, this is physics. Now, that's a very powerful statement. And then there's a gentleman named Nikola Tesla. And Mr. Tesla said this. He said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So if you will grasp those two simple concepts, And if you combine them, basically what it's saying is everything is energy. And so as a human being, you are a vibrational energy. A positive mental attitude puts out or sends out a positive signal, which attracts positive experiences into your life. If you have a negative mental attitude, guess what's going to show up in your life? In your life experiences. Negative experiences. So the key is for you to have a positive mental attitude so that you vibrate at a higher level, which will then attract more things like it, more positive things. And that's why it's so critical for you to have a positive mental attitude, because thoughts become things. What you think about, you bring about. So if you're thinking negatively all the time, I promise you, you're attracting negative things to you. If you start thinking more positive, I can promise you, you'll receive more positive things to be thankful for. So having a positive mental attitude is extremely important if you want to turn your adversities into allies. And last but not least, if you want to turn your adversities into allies, you must discover your unique gifts and talents. Now, whether you believe this or not, you have some unique gifts and talents that are actually encoded in your DNA. There are some things that you are very, very good at that you may or may not recognize. But as I mentioned earlier, you have a spark of divinity in you, and that spark of divinity expresses itself through your creativity. And so discovering your unique gifts and talents is the key to being fulfilled and for making a positive impact in the world. So, as mentioned, I believe every adversity brings us a gift and a lesson. Well, for me, I mentioned that my divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. Well, one of the reasons I say that is because as a result of my divorce, I learned and discovered some unique gifts and talents that I have. For example, writing. I never dreamed of being an author. I didn't start writing books until my late 30s. But yet my divorce triggered me in learning that that was a gift that I had. Another gift that I have that I learned as a result of my divorce was my ability to communicate. I never dreamed of being a public speaker, motivational speaker. It wasn't until after my divorce that I learned that I had this gift for communication. And so that's why I'm absolutely certain that every adversity brings us a gift and a lesson, and it's our responsibility to figure out what those gifts and lessons are so we can discover our unique gifts and talents to apply them to the world. And when we can apply our gifts and talents to making the world a better place, then we have found our divine purpose. Because your divine purpose will be found at the intersection of that which you love to do and how to use that to make the world a better place. So, for example, I love writing and speaking. I share my gifts with the world by writing books and giving seminars and speeches. And therefore, I'm making the world a better place. So therefore, I am on purpose with my life's purpose because I'm doing what I absolutely love, and I'm making the world a little bit better by sharing insights and information with others. And my life is very rewarding and fulfilling. So the key is for you to discover your unique gifts and talents so that you too can positively impact the world. Now, here's what I know with absolute certainty. If you're willing to go on your own transformational journey, and you have to go on your own journey. My journey is different from your journey. Your journey is going to be different from everyone else's. But if you choose to authentically go on your journey, I can assure you, I can promise you, I can guarantee you that your gifts will be revealed to you. I'm absolutely certain of that. But you have to go on your own inner journey. You must learn to listen to that still small voice within yourself that will guide you to your ultimate journey and your ultimate purpose. So it's all up to you. But again, if I can overcome all the adversities that I mentioned earlier, if I can become an author of 8 books, a motivational speaker, a radio and TV shows, with only an 11th grade education, no special training other than teaching myself how to do these things, I'm absolutely certain that you can overcome any adversity in your life and you can make your life extraordinary. So if you'll just take these 5 keys and apply them to your life, I'm certain that you can turn all of your adversities into allies. So if you want to go a little deeper into understanding the principles and what I believe, then I'd like to extend an invitation for you to join me at adversityisyourgreatestally.com. And there at the site, you can gain access to my book. You can get a free ebook that talks about what we've just went over, about the 5 keys to turning adversities into allies. There's a powerful free video of a live presentation that I gave that will inspire and motivate you to, again, overcome any adversities in your life. And it's a great resource that supports you in dealing with any challenge that you might have to deal with. So going over to the website, once again, it's www.adversityisyourgreatestally.com, which will give you access to my books and a powerful free ebook titled 5 Keys to Turning Adversities into Allies. So I want to congratulate you on participating in the Comeback Champion Summit. I want to thank you for taking the last 35 minutes or so out of your life to listen to this presentation. I hope it has been of value to you. I hope it has stirred something in you. I hope it has helped you recognize that no matter what challenge you may be dealing with, you have within you the capacity to overcome that challenge and to move through that adversity. So my prayer is that you will tap into your divinity, find your true purpose, and live the life I know you're capable of living. This has been Coach Micheal Taylor. Make it a great day. I wish you well along your journey of life, and I'll see you on the other side. Take care.